The old market paradigm basically meant that they gave up nearly everything that they had to the business. And I think there's this inherent contradiction for practitioners, which is if you're a great caregiver, you by nature put other people first and you then forget to put yourself first, which is why often these guys need help running their businesses, because actually stuff like price rises and my commercial strategy, they feel about things that are for me, and actually I'm a caregiver.
Well, welcome to Space by Stansons. Today I'm talking to Alex, a co-founder of Until, and what's cool about this episode is I actually have met Alex because of the podcast. It's one of the first guests that people just kept mentioning your spaces, and then I was like, I'm just going to reach out, and I've seen about your spaces. They're absolutely beautiful, of course, and I thought, let's have you on, let's hear the story.
Pleasure to be here.
So welcome. Kicking off, Alex, we chatted just the other day and you were filling me a little bit in your backstory, which was really cool, from the whole Nike thing and everything. Do you want to just paint that picture quickly?
Yeah, a bit about my background.
Yeah,
I mean, I started my career in advertising, just around about 2000 and 2002. And I look, at the time, I really enjoyed it. Looking back, I think what it gave me is understanding how to work with creative people. I was an account handler, a suit they called them, and so I was doing the strategy, client management, and then you're working with these incredible creative brains and you're trying to get the best out of them, right? And so actually, as we think about building space, those skills are really useful, right? You have to work with multiple creators, designers, and so, but I always wanted to work in business and advertising. You feel a little bit like you're like a supplier a little bit, and ad agencies want to win awards. They don't really care so much about the bottom line of the businesses they work for. It's just the truth of it. So I went to Nike, and I ended up running football marketing. But look, I mean, and that was mid-2000s, and it was a fascinating period because it was the dawn of hybrid product, right? And so like Nike ID, Nike Plus, I don't know if you remember, you had these little chips in your running shoe, which interface, and we'd done a partnership with Apple, which interfaced with your iPod. It barely works, but it was fascinating just to start to figure out about how do you create a seamless journey across both. And we built features like, if someone liked that you were running on social media, if they could see you were doing a run, you'd get a cheer in your headphones as you're running, and
totally
all of it. Yeah, so really trying to kind of, it was fascinating for me, right? How do you build experience that works across both? And Nike ID as well. So when I joined, we were refitting Nike Town, and weirdly enough, our office now is quite near Nike Town, and I think they're doing a full refit of it again because it's all boarded up. I mean, the last time I did it was like 17, 18 years ago. And that was fascinating because we built this glass cube in the middle of Nike Town, and that was where Nike ID was. And again, it was like this really elevated experience, but underpinned by digital, because you come in and you design your shoe. But anyway, I did that for a chunk of time, and then really wanted to start businesses, right? Nike is a huge company, and whilst I loved it, obviously huge companies can be frustrating, they can be slowly. I mean, actually probably Nike moves a lot faster than most. And so I wanted to start businesses, but I wasn't quite ready to take on all of the risk. So I found this little consultancy called What If, which was an innovation consultancy. And we help the biggest companies in the world create new products, brands, and services. That's where I met my business partner, Vish. And look, it was fascinating. I think what If taught me was how to understand what people want and need better than anyone else. It was world-class insight. So I became really good just working with all of these brands, just digging around into the lives of consumers, using all of these techniques to really unearth insight, I guess, fuel for business. And also continue to learn about executing, like strategy, managing teams. And then I kind of moved to France in the middle of all of that, had 2 kids, but what happened then was I kind of started building businesses. So I built a small digital business, which was a loyalty app, but it was a purpose-driven business. So 20% of the profits went back to local charities, and the whole idea was it was a business that would put back into a local area. Got some traction, got 50 clients, not big enough to get VC funding, so we had to wind it down. But again, it was a really interesting foray into I think building mission-driven businesses. I mean, the bit that I left out was when I was at Nike, I met a guy called Paul Sinton Hewitt who had started, he had 2 runs and it was called UK Time Trials, but his email address was paul@parkrun.com. So I worked with him to turn that into Parkrun. My wife became the second employee. We actually launched it in France as well. And I'm really proud of that. But like, I guess what that taught me was community and how you build community. I mean, each Parkrun is a fantastic little community. And yeah, we've pulled a lot of that into Until as well, because that's at the heart of what we do, and I'll talk about that in a sec. Yeah, and so then anyway, towards I think it was like 2018, Vish and I were chatting, my business partner, and we started to look at wellness as an opportunity. From personal experience of using practitioners and realizing that actually it's probably not very equitable how it works, right? These are the caregivers who effectively change your life, do the work, right?
Yeah.
And the old market paradigm basically meant that they gave up nearly everything that they earned to the business. And I think there's this inherent contradiction really for practitioners, which is if you're a great caregiver, you by nature put other people first, and you then forget to put yourself first, right? Which is why often these guys need help running their businesses, because actually stuff like price rises, my commercial strategy, they feel about things that are for me, and actually I'm a caregiver, right? And so it's quite easy to exploit that audience, as many businesses have done. And so look, we looked at the wellness category and we felt like, and this is back in 2018, right? So it feels like a long time ago, but stuff like Pellew was kicking off and it was all becoming about a practitioner, right? So those practitioners were becoming celebrities, personal brand was becoming a huge thing. At the same time, another big trend we saw was the rise of like multi-discipline wellness, right? So years ago, you might have had a personal trainer or a physio if you got injured, but now you've got like a life coach, a nutritionist, a personal trainer, and actually people are becoming much more savvy that wellness is a 360 thing. You don't just need one practitioner, you need multiple services and practitioners. So we saw that happening. And look, effectively how we then created Until, I mean, I was still working as a consultant at this time, we were all kind of had other jobs. So we just spent hundreds of hours hanging out with practitioners, using the skills that we'd learned, the insight skills, and just trying to really understand what do they need. And what came out of that was they need three big things, right? So they need infrastructure. So in the old paradigm, if you were a health and wellness practitioner, like a physio, a PT, a psychotherapist, if you were leaving employment with a big brand, you'd go and get some grubby little room somewhere. You trade down. Inevitably, you trade down. And then if you could build a business, you might be able to trade back up and get to better facilities. But facilities were huge. And facilities that you could be proud of, right? And facilities that you love working in. And we'll get into that in a second, I'm sure, about space design. Community as well. I mean, I think this is true of any freelancer. Being a freelancer can be a lonely road, right? Again, you probably left a company where you'd have chats in the kitchen area, and it might be training and development, social nights. You left all of that, and you're on your own running your business, and you have a bad day. Right? There's no one else around you other than your friends and family who you probably don't want to become a kind of pain sponge for your business struggles, right? And so that's hard, right? I think that's true for any freelancers. And then finally, which I was alluding to earlier, help running and growing a business, because often if you're a great practitioner, it doesn't naturally follow that you're a great business person. And so those are the three big unmet needs that we saw. And for us then, physical infrastructure became the market entry point, because A, it's the biggest pain point. B, it's probably the biggest barrier to entry for competition as well. So there's a ton of digital services out there, but obviously, as you know, physical infrastructure is costly, takes time, you have to negotiate leases, get great locations. And so that's where we started. So we started building these clubs, we call them clubs, which effectively we talk about ourselves as like the home of growth for top health and wellness practitioners. And the reason for that is we want to be a platform that they can grow and develop on. And I don't just mean grow their business. Of course that's central, but also growing your network, growing your skills, growing your just life skills and personality and character by working around other incredible people. And so our first club was launched in February 2022 in Soho. And it was just off the back of COVID, and we had all of this, tons of interest, tons of pre-sign-ups. I think Omicron had just gone round in January, and so it was like a government work from home order. So it kind of felt like a pseudo lockdown again. And it was really cold in February, and we opened our doors, and it was super quiet. We've got this kind of like graphs that track our growth. And I think we did like 2 sessions on our first day, like two bookings, right? And and I had this kind of like week of like sitting at my desk going like, God, what have we done? But then the world just started to slowly come back. All of the interests that had been expressed in the kind of couple of months beforehand started to materialize. And we started to build this really powerful community of really top practitioners. And I think the bit we did really well at Soho and continue to do is quality. Really high quality practitioners, because that's really important, because your community is more valuable when you've got great people working alongside great people because they share their knowledge. But equally, then your community becomes a flywheel, because if you get good practitioners, they want to refer into and work with other good practitioners. And so how we design these clubs is you've got a clubhouse, which is where we met when you came to our Marylebone club, where effectively that's where the kind of softer part of a proposition comes to life. Imagine it as a kind of mini co-working social area where practitioners can come in between sessions, run their business. There's events on, there's breakfasts and brunch. They can connect, grow their network, and just genuinely be proud to work in somewhere which is the level they want their business to be at. I mean, when we opened Marylebone, one of the bits I was most proud of was I heard we had a night where members could bring their friends, and I heard one of our newly signed up Marylebone members saying to, it might be one of their partners, I don't know, going, this place makes me want to elevate my business. And that's exactly, and when we opened Soho, people were taking selfies in the clubhouse near our Until logo, and posting, this is where I work, this is my office, right? And so again, this is like the power of when you get design right, how it can really elevate an experience for a practitioner who suddenly, is maybe feeling a bit nervous about taking lead to run their own business, but suddenly they can puff their chest up a bit, right? Yeah. Because they're working from this incredible place, and we've got this brand who's in their corner helping them, which is exactly how I want them to, our members to feel, like we're in their corner, helping them. And so so Soho has this clubhouse. Then effectively, as you go downstairs, you've got treatment rooms. So they're for like physios, osteos, chiropractors. There's like 20 different professions that work out of those rooms. Talk therapy rooms. So they're for like imagine any kind of like therapy where you're sitting across, a bit like this, sitting across from each other, chatting. Not that this is therapy, guy.
Could be.
And it could be.
Maybe it's quite inspiring.
Maybe it will be. Yeah, maybe we'll go there. But it's about psychotherapists, nutritionists, life coaches, and then a gym, a state-of-the-art gym. And look, we're on our 3rd club now. As you will know from probably speaking to a load of people, the learning curve has been incredibly steep, right? So we learned so much. Soho was a really good version 1, but we learned, just not simple, but really big things. Like our insight told us a proposition would work without natural light, and it does, right? Soho's a profitable club, so there's only natural light upstairs, right? The clubhouse and the reception area have natural light. Downstairs doesn't. And Soho's got a great community, profitable club, doing really well. But actually what we've realized is the proposition is so much better with natural light, right? And it really adds to all aspects of it. And so going forward, we'll take a bit of basement space maybe for gym, but not as much. That's a huge learning, right? And obviously, I'm sure you'll know from talking to office and co-working providers, commercially, when you have natural light, you can charge a bit more for it as well. And so actually on day 1, it was the reason we went for more basement spaces, lower risk because you can lower rent, easy to negotiate with landlords because it's space they don't really want, and you can get higher landlord contributions. But actually, going forward, that probably isn't something we do, again, not as much basement space. We just learned a lot about actually, how do you put all of these bits together, right? Because, I was lucky enough to meet one of the co-founders of WeWork this week, Miguel. I toured him around Marylebone, and it was really interesting hearing his experience about actually what happens when you bring all of these different people together in a building. Obviously, different business, but it's a challenge that we're always cognizant of, right? Because the huge strength for our proposition is we bring all of these different health and wellness practitioners together, and now healthcare, but I'll talk about that in a sec. And that's the benefit of it, right? Because imagine if we were just for personal trainers, it becomes really competitive really quickly. You've got all of these trainers together, they're all doing the same thing, fighting for the same clients. As soon as you make it multidisciplinary, you've got a much more collegiate, collaborative, curious, I want to learn from you versus competitive, right? And so there's loads of brilliance in that. And actually what we're seeing is we're becoming a platform that practitioners come and build a business on. So they come and then they start working, they'll create maybe they'll identify an audience like women's health, and then they'll work with a psychotherapist, a nutritionist, a master. So they'll build a women's health proposition and business on our platform. So not just using our space, but working with our other members to build their team. And that's exactly what we want our business to be. So all of the magic happens when you bring those practitioners together, but it's also where the risk happens, right? And actually in Soho, I'll be really candid, we got some things wrong. I mean, the landlord, I don't know how you do this, they forgot to put the bike ramp in, and we were the first tenant in. And so even before we were building a PC, we were doing our construction, our design. And they were like, oh, actually, we need to change your demise because we need to put the bike ramp here. And so, our coach proposition, which is our talk therapy rooms, we wanted them to be more secluded. They were just a bit too probably close to some of the other bits. I mean, so they work really well for some practitioners, but they could be a better experience for people who want it to be very quiet and calm. We learned a lot about actually just the intricacies of building a brilliant gym. We've got Warner Brothers editing studios just below our squat racks. And so, and that created a lot of technical, it really gave us a deep dive into the technical requirements of building a gym and just how cognizant you need to be, and there's a lot of heavy infrastructure going in there. And just the tonality and the vibe of it as well, right? Because Soho is probably a bit tougher, and the reason for that is, I mean, I lead on, about, I guess, the product, the brand, marketing, and space design, the physical product would be part of that. And I wanted it to be a little bit tougher because you're coming to work. So if you're coming for an hour to an until, you are coming to transform and grow and get better. So you're either fixing an injury, you're either getting stronger, dealing with trauma. And so we didn't want it to be like a spa because we wanted it to still have that element of transformation and somewhere where you are coming to work. The Soho is probably just a bit too tough. Liverpool Street, our second club, is smaller. It's got a gym, treatment rooms, and recovery technology. But then Marylebone is probably the crystallization of our products now. And it took kind of 3 clubs to get there, which I don't know if that's standard, but actually talking to Miguel from WeWork is really interesting. He was going, I always, because he led on the product as well, he had a similar mindset of like, everyone has to be better, right? Everyone, we have to evolve it. Like we don't, we're far away from going, right, we just lock it in and here it is, right? And so I think the learning curve's gone like this, and now it's probably going to go like that, right? But we should always be continually improving them. But Marylebone, I've talked about the natural lights. There's natural light upstairs, downstairs. It's more like a lower ground than a basement. The gym's got natural light that comes into it. But actually, what we did in Marylebone is we folded medical and dentistry into our proposition. So so we call them WellCare clubs because they combine healthcare and wellness. And I think that's what we're building going forward. And the reason we think that's super powerful is because it augments your community, right? So we've still got the treatment rooms, a gym floor, but you've now got consultant level practitioners, GPs, the people who diagnose inside your infrastructure. So that becomes really interesting because they're just super knowledgeable and they can add loads to the community, but equally they're the people who refer, right? So you need this physio, you need this trainer, right? This nutritionist. So having that referral, almost referring down into your community, is really powerful. At the same time, you've got like the wellness practitioners who need specialists. My client's busted his knee, I need a knee specialist. Great, you can refer back up to a knee specialist inside the ecosystem. And so for consumers, we are very much a practitioner-focused business. That's our edge. We're a mission-driven business in the sense that we are there to unleash the potential practitioners. But there is always the world is often calling on us to kind of almost build a consumer side to the business. We don't have plans to do that aggressively yet, but we have got a nascent consumer service proposition called Health Concierge, where effectively consumers who seek us out, and it's happening increasingly, people are going, well, look, I'm seeing this one practitioner here. I know you've got all of these other great ones. How do I book them? And so we built a service there where effectively we can start to, based on your wellness goals, marry you up with different practitioners. And so that, again, having all of those practitioners in the ecosystem makes that a much more rounded offer, right? In the sense that we can give you a GP, a nutritionist, a psychotherapist, a trainer. But that's not the core purpose of the business. That's something that, as we've just been growing, people have just been asking us for. But the core purpose very much is supporting practitioners and giving them incredible infrastructure and a work environment.
But it is still helping those practitioners to grow, which is because you're getting their referrals, which is great. You mentioned about having quality practitioners back a bit. What does a quality practitioner look like, and how do you make sure they are quality?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And look, again, it's an ongoing work in progress. So a really good practitioner, I mean, we work with 46 different professions, right? And so this is where it gets quite complicated, is each of those have got different discriminators of what defines quality. And so what we did we've just figured this out as we went. On day one, what we did is we really, because we went out into the world and talked to practitioners before we built the proposition. In a way, we almost built the community before we defined the concept. We almost had a mission that we knew we wanted to help these guys. We started hanging out with them. And then that mission and that process of hanging out to them led to the creation of this concept. But that meant that we already had community because we'd been going out talking to them. And it was quite localized community because we knew we wanted to launch in kind of Soho, central London, like W1, right? And so actually, as you start to have those insight chats, and then you start to show them like materials to test, right? Like, what about this brochure? They start sharing it with their friends, and we created a very basic website where they could sign up. And so actually, because we were just focusing on very high quality practitioners, and one of my co-founders, a guy called Dan Chappell, is an ex-personal trainer. So we used a lot of his network. And so ultimately, we ended up creating an organic community on day one that was just super high quality because that was our network, basically. But then what you find is when you get really high quality practitioners, they recruit for you, right? Because almost, I mean, I knew we were onto something because you know what it's like with startup. You end up doing everything. Well, I'm sure you've been there. So I was helping with tours in the first few months, over the first few years. And you know you're on something when you're touring someone and they walk in, they go, "Oh God, you're here," and "Wow, hi." Do you know what I mean? It's like, you go, "Okay, right, something's happening here," which is, good people then want to be around good people. And actually then they become, and if you get this right, I mean, it's a Soho House kind of like model, right? If you get this right on day one, it also then becomes self-policing. You got to be careful with that. But what I mean by that is a couple of times, I'll just use trainers as an example. We let a personal trainer in who maybe had inflated their experience a little bit. When other trainers see them on the gym floor and they're not doing exercises correctly, or what they're coaching isn't right best practice, they'll come to us and they'll tell us. And then we only a couple of times we've given people mentoring and help them. But I think I love it when that happens, right? Because the community is defining your quality.
I was just going to say, it's like self-cleaning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is wicked. You mentioned your co-founders a couple of times. Who are they?
So there are four of us. So there's Vishal Amin, who's CEO. I'm CXO, so I look after anything external. There's Dan Chappell, who leads on partnerships, and then there is Jay Amin, who works in finance. So there's four of us.
Okay, was Stephen involved at some point?
Stephen is involved as an investor, yeah. So Stephen came on board in 2023. Initially with a deeper role as we were kind of building the product out, which was great to have his influence, his knowledge, but now is more in an investor capacity. But it's been great to have him as a sounding board, yeah.
Yeah. So you weren't on Dragon's Den, I
No.
I didn't think I'd seen you.
No, we weren't on Dragon's Den. I mean, how Stephen talks about it was like it just kept on popping up, right? Like a bit like with you.
A bit like this.
Yeah. So like he was looking to invest in a kind of fitness business. He'd done some research. Our chairman, a guy called Mark Knorr, mentored Stephen at the start of his career, and so had mentioned it to him. A couple of other people had mentioned it to him, and when he was researching fitness and wellness businesses, he felt it was the most exciting one he'd found, right? And so I think it was just a combination of like just conversations and luck, basically. Yeah.
Amazing. So what's he done for you?
Obviously investment partnerships, but just a lot of advice about our brand, our community, our experience, storytelling. I think Stephen's super smart guy and just has the ability to add value in tons of different places. And I think early on for us as well, it was more, when you're building a business, it can be hard to see the wood from the trees sometimes because you're in it every day, right? And we're at the point in the journey now where I kind of almost, even though I think I might know the answer, I want us to get someone else to do it because I almost feel too close to stuff. And I think it's just sometimes having someone external who can go, yeah, I think this is great. And by the way, I think there's a gap here, right? And so that kind of external perspective from someone who is super plugged into wellness, smart, was really useful for us.
Amazing. I bet it was.
Yeah, that was.
And you also touched about it being like a really, it's kind of like a luxury wellness healthcare, but you're also dealing with solo practitioners.
Yes.
I don't know if the right word is freelancers, but startup
solopreneurs. Yeah. Basically, yeah.
So how does that balance in terms of like the luxury side, but also the accessibility, maybe the affordability for some of these new people coming in? What does that look like?
I mean, and this is where like quality is really important because we're definitely not the money. We try and provide really good value for money, right? So we're not the most expensive. Like there'll be like freelance personal trainer gyms that will charge more than us. There'll be rooms in Harley Street that charge more than us. We're definitely not the most expensive. But this is why quality really matters, right? Because good practitioners run good businesses, charge the right price point, right? So even in our, just because it's easiest to talk about, even in our personal training business, probably got like 200 trainers working out of all of our 3 clubs. And you've got people charging from £250 an hour to £60 an hour, right? And £60 would be the minimum on our platform, right? Most on average, most would be charging about 100. But and this is again why quality facilities really matter and design, is most practitioners will put their prices up when they come to us. Because they'll go, actually, look, this is a great facility. I should be backing myself. I should be growing the right business. And that's something we do help them with as well, which is like price rise discussions. How do you have them? How do you manage your business? And again, it's that insight I talked about at the top of this discussion, which is they don't put themselves first because it feels like that's not caring, that's not client focused. But actually, the really good ones go, this is the right price point for my quality and the right price point for me to have a successful business as well, right? And so we meet many who we think are undercharging. Some we can coach them, they can join us and put their prices up. Some don't want to take that leap, and that's fine.
I'm thinking about somebody that I know is literally that person, so kind, like so just wants you to excel and do your absolute best. And like his kind of fulfillment is you flourishing, but almost to the detriment of himself potentially. I don't fully know, but like I could see that being very, very true. Yeah. And when you talk about that, I'm like, I can. Yeah. That makes complete sense for the character types that are in those roles. If like he was to sign up with Until, what would like the business support package? How does that look for them? You talk about helping them and increasing their prices. Is that classes? What is that? Yeah.
So look, it's something that we're always building and evolving. But I think in itself, a core product does a lot of that heavy lifting because the community helps, right? So we had a physio leave to go to Australia, and what he said to me was the knowledge that the value I've got from being in this clubhouse every day, just from chatting to practitioners, finding out how they run their business, getting tips for like videographers in Bali who like video editing in Bali, like which is dirt cheap. And I know my friend Bob's doing it and he gave me the contacts, and actually getting this advice around how to set my Google profile up. And then we do training events where we bring in business growth specialists. We've got an account management service where we can kind of connect them with the advice they need and look and actually spot if they're struggling and their sessions are going down and do they need help. And obviously we talked about the health concierge product, which gives them clients. And we do have a service store, which is a nascent product where they can buy like a website, social media content. And so we've got some in-house providers who will just do that for them at really good rates. And we're going to keep building that out. So I guess to answer your question, it's a mixture of organic, which you can go in and self-serve and build your network, and because everyone's at the same stage, right? And often, like of course, we can give you, like, there's two ways of doing it. We can give you access to a web designer, and we've got them. But actually, you can equally go and talk to all of our members who have built their websites, and you can probably find maybe someone who's better, right? Maybe it's better for what you do. And so I do think the community, and look, we haven't talked about this, I should have done, the most powerful expression of our ability to help practitioners is the commercial model, right? So it's super flexible. They pay a rolling monthly membership fee of like roughly £150 a month. And then they buy credits, which lasts for 3 months, and they use those credits inside our app to book rooms or gym floors or facilities when they need it, right? And so that means that you're getting paid, you're paying us, you're paying for space when you're earning.
Yeah.
So that's very different to how the rest of the industry works. And you can cancel with 1 month's notice, right? We don't want to lock people in because they've signed a contract. We want them to be there because they find it valuable. And so that gives them the commercial flexibility to scale up and scale down without any penalties. And so I think that's huge for them, right? To the extent that you can even book half-an-hour sessions on our platform. And so that flexibility really allows them to run their business their way. And many of them want a lifestyle business, so that helps. The community is organic, growth, tips, and then we try and supercharge that through services, our kind of nascent services there.
Yeah, I love that commercial model. I think that's so, because you're going to be nervous going out, especially these sort of guys and girls, and having that kind of flexibility, that not big commitment, that scary kind of thing that makes you feel sick at night. That's a really wicked
exactly
setup. I think we've covered like the commercial really nicely, and the whole like sort of business that they can get, how much practitioner support can get, and the community side. I love that, how it's almost self-cleansing, self-building, it's self-everything-ing, which is...
If you get it right,
it sounds really great. I can't let you go without talking about the spaces.
Yeah, of course, let's do it, yeah.
Obviously, I went to the one,
Marylebone,
and it was gorgeous. I did love how you transitioned, you touched on it, but how you transitioned from the gym, which is more hardcore, it's more like heavy, to more calming and that type of thing. And you actually head up all of the physical spaces.
Yes.
So what does that look like when you're doing a brief for a company? What are you looking for?
Well, there's a couple of things, right? So there's the vibe, the emotion, the feeling, right? And we want our spaces to be calming but inspiring, right? And so and it's a huge bit for me, is getting that feeling right as you walk in, because you want to feel calm, safe, like this is a space where you can almost decompress a little bit, having come in from the street. And that decompression is really important because it helps you prepare for your session, right? You're going to go and do some work, right? But equally, and I said this at the start about Liverpool, Soho, I don't want it to feel like a spa, right? But I do want it to feel inspiring and uplifting. And it's calibrating those two things is quite hard, right? Because it's very easy to be very comfortable, very calming. But actually, that inspiring edge is really important. So it's a space that also lifts you, pushes you, challenges you a little bit. But again, go too far that way and you've got a space that's probably a bit too cold. And so that calibration at a kind of vibe, feeling level is really important. And then just a lot of like function goes into the spaces as well, right? And but just before I talk about the function, from the kind of aesthetic side of it, the vibe is really important, but equally the quality, right? Because there is not only do I want our members to feel super proud to work here, right? And so, they realize when you spent money on like a nice countertop or there's a stone floor, right? They feel that. And I've always believed about the subconscious power of those things, right? And that's why I chose the job title Chief Experience Officer rather than CMO, Chief Marketing Officer would have been the logical one. Because actually I think, for what I do, the focus has to be on experience, and experience is multi-layered, and that's why I look after brand, marketing, physical product, digital product, because that encompasses everything. And what you think and feel about a product and a brand will be defined by all of those little touch points. How you felt when you went to the website, what downloading the app felt like and opening it, when you walked in and what you smelled and what you saw. And actually, and I really believe in the subconscious nature of design, which is, so like little things, you might not vocalize it, but when you see something that's not right, when you see 5 things that aren't right, and then 10, then you might vocalize it. But it's like a filling of a reservoir subconsciously, right? Through things that aren't right, but equally things that are right. And so I think it's just getting really clear on those little touch points that are going to make a real difference to how they feel. And that is like materials, but it is also the function and the ergonomics of the space. And so given that we're 12,000 square foot and we're fitting a lot in, the function bit becomes really important, because actually, if you don't build these spaces really well, you can create friction pretty quickly. So then it's things like wide corridors, right? So we've got quite a small space, but we're fitting quite a lot in. The risk with that is you can have something that very quickly feels like a lot of boxes and it's painful giving space to a wider corridor because it's not billable space, right? You can't charge for it. But actually, I think things like that are really important because they allow you to then at the other side cram quite a lot of rooms in, right? Because I think it makes the space still feel like it can breathe and premium. And then transitions as well, which you alluded to, right? I think transitions in a space like ours are really important because you have, I mean, mine up and upstairs is where the healthcare element is, and downstairs is more wellness with the gym. And just being able to have the transition between those two things is really important because, again, it guides members and their consumers, we call them guests, that how are you going to use this space and what it's for, right? And just the other point about materials, vibe, and that kind of subconscious expectation is that a lot of our clients, the guests that come and see our members, are super high net worths, right? We have Hollywood actors, Formula One drivers. And so again, they bring out from the outside in, they bring an expectation from their daily lives, the places they eat, the hotels they stay at, right? And so the airport lounges they use, that there's just that level of expectation. And so just being able to deliver on that. But then you get into where we really sweat it, and we are doing even more for our future clubs, where we really sweat it then is like the stuff like joinery, right? It might seem like, okay, well, look, you've got a treatment room, it's got some cupboards, but that's where I think there's a huge opportunity to nail utility in a way that a competitor couldn't, all of a little bit. So in future clubs, we're going to have the consultation desks, which you would use in the medical consulting rooms. They're going to flip up and move round because actually what we've learned is some people have got big machines, they want to get around the bed. And actually then you've got this room that can flip from a brilliant consultation area into a much bigger space that can be used for the actual procedures. But it's all of those little touches where you put like the medical gloves, how you make it really easy for someone to access a bin in joinery, all of the storage components really insightfully built so the room can be really beautiful and really sleek. It's all of those little elements, like just where you put the power sockets in a room so that you don't see any cables, right? Because you've got like these examination couches, effectively electric beds. And so it's just sweating that detail, like to make these spaces super highly functional, really ergonomic, but beautiful as well. And don't forget, if I'm designing a room with my team, one room might be used by 20 plus different professions, right? So take a medical room, it's used by everyone from a dermatologist to a GP to a consultant to an aesthetician, and they all need something slightly different. And we do the legwork, right? So we talk to all of those practitioners to find out what they need. And then it's just trying to deliver a great experience for all of them, but not getting too specialist, right? Because if you go too specialist for one profession, it doesn't work for all of the others. And so I think that's just a continual insight project, to be fair. And I think every club we do gets better and better. The joinery at our next club is going to be incredible.
Sucker for some joinery.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, well, no, but it's just like, because you think about a room, right? What is a room other than an examination couch, is what they call it. It's basically the electric bed that you lie on or goes up into the seat. The rest is joinery, right? Equally, gym equipment. So a lot of it, we get contractors to make bespoke equipment for us because what's really interesting about us is we're designing for the professional, not the consumer. And so it means we can really geek out on getting really technical about how things work because they're experts and they want expert equipment. And so I love that bit of it. And I think when we get it right, so our joinery, for instance, will have a unique design aesthetic in a way that a track bike looks sleek and beautiful, not because someone went, hey, let's just make it look sleek and beautiful. It's because of aerodynamics, because of function, right? And so you strip everything off and you've got this incredible looking bike. It's the same kind of thing. It's like we will have brilliant looking joinery because we're trying to get function out of it, not just going, hey, how can we make these covers look nice? And I think when that happens, I think that's us at our best. Brilliant function, but then beautiful execution as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely can see myself one of those people that you're building for the practitioner, but I'm this person being like, I would just like to see your network. So I'd like to book some meetings with some of the GPs and some of the PTs and that sort of thing. And like, how can I see who to book with? Because I want to come to your space. I know the guys there or the girls there are wicked, and I've kind of got that. So I can see that potentially being something for you. What are your growth plans for Until? Opening new places? Globally, what's that look like?
So we've got 4 more in the pipeline for London this year. Okay. We haven't announced. I probably can't say it because we're going to announce our 4th club imminently. We start construction on it in May, but as we haven't announced its market, I probably can't say it here. Okay. And then we've got another one signed, and 2 more about to sign imminently. So that'll take us to 7 clubs in London, and we're also looking at the US as a growth opportunity. It just feels like wellness is huge in the US. We thrive when there's a good density of wellness practitioner, and in US cities there's tons of health and wellness practitioners, and so we think the conditions are right. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to do in London first, but I think those next 4 clubs will give us a brilliant ecosystem in London. Because one of the things that we try and do, and I should have mentioned earlier, is give these guys the ability to build multi-site businesses. And what's really encouraging is quite a high percentage of our members are now working out of 2 or all of our clubs, all 3 of our clubs. So actually, because we are for these, they're entrepreneurs, right? They've taken the leap to build their own business, and then you give them the opportunity. So it's like, look, hey, for no extra risk, because you don't have to build a gym or a medical center. You can now open, so let's say if we have one in Farringdon where we are now, you could now hire another employee and start having a business run out of Farringdon, or just start yourself doing some sessions here to see if there's a market here. And if there is, grow it, then recruit someone, right? And so that's what a load of our members have been doing, just building multi-site businesses. And we've seen a huge rise of what we call teams. So we've got a teams product, where on day 1 we were just individuals, but now we're individuals who have built a team, up to 10 team members on our platform, because they're realizing it's just a much more cost-effective, better way of doing it versus taking the risk on themselves. And so we're excited about those other clubs because it just creates this bigger infrastructure ecosystem where practitioners can start to build like a 7-club business, a 7-site business with 0 overheads. And so I think once we've done that, London will be in a really good place.
I'm excited for America though, because they're used to paying for their healthcare. So it's not, for us, it's more of a luxury, but for them, it's like fairly standard, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's exciting about, I went a year ago, I spent a week in New York, and look, the conditions are the same. The problems that we're solving here exist in New York, but equally, people are just more entrepreneurial, right? So health and wellness, everyone's got a side hustle. And so ultimately, we're like a platform for people to build a business on. If you are entrepreneurially focused, you will embrace that opportunity a lot more. So
yeah, no, too right. And what about other industries like creative or spaces for those?
I feel we've already bitten off a lot with like healthcare and wellness, right? And so they're huge growth areas, and even the complexity we've got inside that. I mean, we've built a whole digital product to enable us to make booking the space for all of those different practitioners an easy experience. And that's a proprietary tool. And even that is a huge piece of work for us, right? To go, actually, how do dentists want to book different from medical practitioners? And enabling us to generate the commercial revenue from the space requires that digital layer. And so already we've got that complexity. There's so much headroom inside wellness. I mean, we say we work with 46 plus different professions. It's growing every month, right? Because as we broaden our offer into healthcare, more practitioners are coming to us, and there's so many different specialists out there, right? And so I think there's already tons of headroom in healthcare and wellness. And so I think for now that's enough for us.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I also need to let you get on because I know you've got other meetings. But before I let you go, can I just ask about your book?
Yes.
That you launched.
Yeah.
In an idea.
The idea in you.
The idea in you. Yeah.
Yeah. Published 10 years ago actually now. 2015. It was published by Penguin around the world. Was a bestseller. I mean, I guess I wrote that book with my friend Martin Amor because we'd learned a lot about how to have ideas, and that's when I was working as a consultant. And I guess the genesis behind the book is a little bit like behind Until, which is like enabling people to thrive and build their own thing. And so that book effectively distilled everything that we learned working with the biggest companies in the world about how you find an idea and then get it going, right? So it's not the end-to-end business Bible, right? But it's not going to tell you how to raise massive investment, but it will tell you how to spot an idea you're passionate about and really care about, and how to take it to market. And effectively, trying to get people to do their own thing, which is what Until is as well.
Yeah, and if I was to write a book, what would be like? What 3 things would you tell me to do?
Well, I guess the why behind anything is really important, right? And so we had a really powerful why behind writing that book because we wanted to share that knowledge because we think actually there's nothing, you will know this, right? There's nothing quite like with your podcast, your business, there's nothing quite like putting something out into the world that you've made. It's fantastic. And so we wanted people to experience that. And so I'd go, well, you kind of know what your why is a little bit because you're doing this podcast, right? And so I think the answer to your book is probably something probably inside this somewhere.
No, it definitely would be. That's interesting. Right, Alex, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, the insights, the stories. I even know a few people in this sort of wellness space that I'm definitely recommending this to. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.